one wall to the other, to get to the Holy of Holies. It was the largest temple ever built on earth. But during the 1st century AD, the Philistines took over Jerusalem. There was a B plan for the ark. That B plan was called the a Dead Sea community on the side of the Dead Sea. That was the Essenes. Now, the first person that talked about the Essenes and that community was Edgar Cayce. Edgar Cayce, in one of his readings, said there was a community on the side of the Dead Sea that had written scrolls, and that we were going to find these scrolls. Now, when he said that, I think it was in the 30s, all the archaeologists said that was bunk, because there was no writing whatsoever about that society on the side of the Red Sea. There was no record of it anywhere. That was because it was the B plan for the ark. They weren't advertising. So when they took the ark out of the Temple of Solomon, they brought it to the Essene, which was a community of high priests that was constantly being made ready in case the ark would show up. Go ahead.
James, the brother of Jesus, was with the Essenes for a long time.
Well, I think that the whole family was with the Essene for a long time. The Essene recorded the coming of the ark. This is not my imagination. In the Essene scrolls that were found, you know that there was over 5,000 scrolls, or at least 3,000, scrolls that were found. There's only 100 that have been released to the public. One of these that was released to the public is a very, very eccentric scroll. It's not written on papyrus. It's written on copper. The copper that it's written on is the purest copper ever found on earth. There is no purest copper ever found anywhere else. No. What does the copper scroll? Now, obviously, the copper scroll were written on copper to make sure they would survive the ages. And what did the copper scrolls talk about? It talked about the coming of the ark at the Essene community. It says literally that the ark came to their temple. And it describes where it hid all of the components that were kept around the ark. How many components do you think there was? 64. There is exactly 64 lines describing the components of the ark. Some of these components have now been found. It was oils and incense and stuff that they kept around the ark that were part of what you needed to be safe when you went into the ark room. You had to wear certain clothing. You had to cover your eyes. You had to have certain oils on your skin for the conductivity. All these things. Do you guys understand where I'm going there? Okay. If some of you read Elizabeth Heich's book called Initiation? Note, in Elizabeth Heich's book, when she's initiated in front of the Ark of the Covenant inside the Grand Pyramid of Giza. That book is extremely accurate. I've done a lot of research. I assure you, That book is extremely accurate. And she actually describes going towards the ark, and she actually describes smelling negative ions in the air. So you actually, she's actually talking about the arc generating electromagnetic field and ionizing the air. Well, you know, they have now found some of the components around the Dead Sea Scrolls of the ark. And when they did, it turned out that they found, I don't have this picture, but they found the place where the Essenes say that they hid the ark, because they had it for a fairly long time. The place where they hid the ark was a cavern across from where they lived, across from the temple. When they opened that cavern, and this is research you can find on the net, when they opened that cavern, there was a there was a blue iridescent spot in the middle of it. There was NASA engineers, actually NASA physicists that were there at the opening of that cavern. They reported that blue spot being there, and they said something really interesting. They said, this is similar to the blue spot we found inside the Mayan pyramids when we first opened them. So they were making a direct relationship between the Ark of the Covenant, the effect of the Ark of the Covenant on the space-time manifold that left some trace, and the Mayan pyramids. And so, interestingly, when the ark disappears from the temples of the Temple of Solomon and goes to the Essene, at the same period, very shortly after, the living ark, Emmanuel, appears onto the scene. Emmanuel might have been able to walk on water because he had some anti-gravitational capability in his back pocket. Go ahead.
Well, in the Book of Mormon, when Emmanuel or Jesus visits the American continent after he left Israel.
Well, then he would have had to be able to do some pretty good flying too. And so, interestingly, Emmanuel is the living ark. Well, these things are related. Why? Because when we built the external Merkaba, the external ark, all we're building is a reproduction of our internal functioning. The inside singularity, the inside arc that keeps us alive. And so we're creating a very short feedback. That's why you had to be initiated very carefully before you could approach the ark. You had to be pure of heart. Because the feedback is so short that if you have destructive intent, you'll just die right on the spot. It'll bite you right back.
Aaron's sons.
So Aaron's sons died that way. It's a very fail-safe system. You can't use it for destruction very much. Because by the time you try to use it for destruction, you're already dead. See, it's nothing new the universe